Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. This time we'll be making this cute stylized kitchen, and this will be a full tutorial with lighting and rendering settings, the thing you all asked for, so I hope you'll like it. If you like this video, please hit that like button, it helps the channel, and if you're new to the channel and you'd like to see content like this in the future, please hit that subscribe button and the bell button if you want to get notified when I release something new. And this is actually the live scene I have open right now, so this is what we'll be making. And of course, there's quite a lot to do here, so I'll be going fast over some things. If you're interested in in-depth explanation of everything I'm doing and all the techniques and my thinking behind them, you might consider taking the courses I've prepared. You can go and check them out on my website polygonrunway.com, or you can check the link in the description. You will go from project to project, and by the end of the course you will find out there's no limit on what you can create. If you're new to the world of 3D and Blender, you might consider become a 3D Illustrator course, which is really designed for absolute beginners. Or if you know your way around Blender a little bit more, you might consider the 3D characters and illustration course, which will guide you through more intermediate techniques and through full cartoon character creation. So if you're interested, please go check them out. And if you go through the links in the description, you can get a nice discount on them. And there's one more thing I want to address. Recently I've ran a Q&A section on my Instagram, and there's one thing I got asked multiple times, so I thought it would be nice to address this in a video for everyone and maybe make a habit out of this, to take a minute or so in these tutorials to react to some of your most pressing questions. So this week's question was how to keep the drive going, how to push yourself beyond your limits. So basically how to keep going and to keep creating. And this might come from a place where you see me creating a lot of content on social media and Instagram. I create a lot, but at the same time I have a system in place, I've built my habits. So rather than looking to push yourselves beyond the limit, which is not really healthy, you should be looking to build some kind of balance. And what helped me the most is the book Peak Performance. You can find the link in the description. And this really changed my perspective on how to approach work and how to stay on your peak performance for as long time as possible. And it's not about pushing yourself to the limit, it's about finding the balance that will enable you to do this over a long period of time. So rather than sprinting, you should be thinking of a marathon, because yes, there's a lot you can do right now, this week, this month, when you push yourself to the limits, but can you keep it for 2 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years? I seriously doubt that. So it's really healthy to put in some time to rest, to recharge, and generally have some time off, and take it one step at a time, building on your previous skills and doing it long term. So that's my advice this week. If you'd like to hear more of these n-gons of truth from me, please go ahead and leave some question in the comments. We might do this on a regular basis if there's interest on your side. That's about the introductions, and now let's jump right into empty Blender file and let's create this cute stylized kitchen. First we'll need to create a room, so let's press Shift A and let's add a plane. Now I will tab into the edit mode, let's press S and 4 to scale this 4 times. Its dimensions I used most often. And now I will press 2 for edge select this edge, shift click here to select the other one, let's press E then Z to extrude this up, and I will enter 7 on the numpad to enter 7 meters. This will be a little bit higher. And now I'll press A to select all, and Alt E and extrude faces along normals, and let's press S to make this even, and let's extrude it like this, make it a little bit more bulky, just like that. And now I'll create that floor, so let me go for face select by pressing 3. Let's select this face, Shift D to duplicate and right click to release, and now I'll press P and enter to separate this into a new object. Now I'll press tab to exit the edit mode and select the new object, and let's tab in. And now I want to slice this up, I want to create tiles, so let's create like 7 cuts, right click to release, and let's do the same on the other side, and we can specify the number of cuts here as well. And now let's look from the top, and I will just select all of this we don't need, and let's press X and delete faces. And now I'll press A and extrude one tile, and now I will use array modifier, so tab out, go into the modifiers tab, and let's add array modifier, and I will go -1 on the X, and let's duplicate this few times. And now let's add another array modifier, and let's go 0 on the X and 1 on the Y axis, and let's multiply this several times. So this looks flat, but actually if I enable wireframe overlay, you can see these are multiple tiles, and we will see them later when I add bevels. So for now we'll leave it like this, and now let's add some equipment. So first of all, I want to start with that fridge, so let's shift right click the cursor here and let's press shift A, add a plane, and I think this will work just fine. So let's tab in and extrude our fridge like this, and we can leave it as a block for now. Right now we are trying to find the proportions, so let's now add a cupboard. So shift right click here, so it's kind of in the middle, and now let's press shift A and add a plane. Let's press shift A and add a plane, and now I'll press S and scale this up to fill the remaining space, and scale it on the x-axis like this. Now tab out and move it on x-axis, so G, then X, and move it here. So I want to leave that origin point in the middle there, and maybe this is too long, so let's scale it down a tiny bit, and we can leave some space on the left here. Now tab back in and extrude our cupboard like this, and now I'll press shift D, right click to release, P, enter to separate. I do this quite often, so let's tab into that new object and let's extrude that one as well, and we can select this face in the front, press G, then X, and move it outside a tiny bit. Now it's time to create some doors, so we can again reuse some geometry. So tab out, select this cupboard object, tab in, and we'll select this front face, press shift D and P, enter to separate, tab out, select the new object, tab in, and I will do, now press Ctrl R to do a cut here in the middle, and I just want to delete one side, so let's select the face, press X and delete faces, and I will go ahead and add mirror modifier here, and instead of X let's go for Y axis, and now let's just modify it a little bit. So select this edge right there and move it inside tiny bit here as well, and bring up the bottom part, and now let's select all and extrude the doors like this. Okay, that should work. So tab out and shift right click the cursor here, we'll press shift A and add UV sphere, and we don't need so much of a geometry, so let's do these 24 and 12 rings, and now tab in, make this smaller like this, but still leave it bulky. This should be a stylized design, and now we'll add mirror modifier once again, and we'll use mirror object, the cupboard here in the middle, and switch to Y-axis. So we have some cupboards, maybe we can move it to the side tiny bit so we have some more space here, and make this tiny bit larger and wider. Okay, just like this. And now for the fridge, let's bevel these top edges here. So let's select them, press Ctrl B, and bevel them with few segments like this. This should work just fine. And now select the front face, let's press Shift D and P to separate, tab out, select the new object, and extrude this outside, just like that. And now we'll bevel this, but I want to leave out the bottom edge, so let's go for edge select, deselect the bottom edge, and let's press Ctrl B to bevel it just like this, to have some nice rounded door, a little bit of a retro design. And if this is too wide, we can select both objects, toggle the X-ray, and push this inside tiny bit. If you don't have the toggle X-ray option on the pie menu, you can do that right here as well. And now I want to duplicate the cupboards, so let's select these two objects, leave out the handles for now, and let's press Shift D and Z to move this up. I use the Shift D because I don't want this to be linked. I want to modify this a little bit. Let's move this to the bottom, and now select both of those, tab in, toggle the X-ray, and we can select all of these vertices and push them on the X-axis a little bit, and then maybe push everything up a tiny bit like this, and then the bottom part. Okay, and now it's time to Alt D these handles so they're linked, and move them on the X-axis, maybe a little bit higher. And now it's time for a kitchen sink, so shift right click, and now it's time for a kitchen sink, so shift right click here in the middle, and let's press Shift A and add a cube, and we can scale this down tiny bit by pressing S and then S and Y to scale it on the Y-axis, just like that, maybe even smaller, and push this down tiny bit. Now tab out, and first of all I want to duplicate this, so Shift D and right click to release, and now Shift click the table and let's press Ctrl-. And before you do this, make sure you have Bool Tool add-on activated, so go into the preferences, find Bool Tool add-on and activate it, and now if you press Ctrl- you will subtract the cube from the table. And now let's do this once again, but actually make sure you're using the right cube, so only the wired one, and shift click the cupboard and Ctrl-. So this should create a hole and you still have the original cube in place, and we'll make use of that. And now we'll make use of it, so tab in, again toggle the X-ray and we'll delete the bottom vertices. And now let's just move this down somewhere here, and now I'll press X and delete only faces. That will leave us with the wireframe. And now we can press A to select all, press EZ to extrude this up, press F to cover it, I to inset, and E again to extrude down. So that's it about the kitchen sink. And now let's create some detail here. So I'll tab in, select this edge and hold Shift S and choose cursor to select it. And now I'll add the plane, tab in, S to make it smaller, press E to extrude, Ctrl R for a loop cut and extrude this as well, and push it back tiny bit on X-axis and maybe make it smaller. Okay, just like this. And we can reuse this part here, and if you go here and enable face snapping with align and rotation, you can just press Shift D and hold Ctrl here to snap it on the door. And now we can tab in, toggle that X-ray and move this inside and maybe make it a little bit longer. So this way we can reuse geometry really quick. And now it's time to cut in some window, so let's shift right click here and let's add a cube. And now I will scale this up and on Z axis, so S and Z, just like that, and move it up tiny bit. And again, I will want to reuse some of this geometry, so tab in, select the front face, Shift D, right click to release, P, enter to separate. And now with the original cube, I will shift click the room and Ctrl- to create a cut, and we are left with this plane right here that we created. So now we can tab in and push this inside by pressing G and Y. And now we can press I to inset and E to extrude some window in. And if you want some more interesting design here, we can cut in the middle by pressing Ctrl R, and now select this face right here, and now select this face right here, extrude it even more, and here we can do inset and extrude for the window, so it's a nice little sliding window. And to make this even more detailed, we can tab in, select this bottom face, Shift D, P to separate, select that new edge right here, tab in, press E, then Y to extrude, A to select all, and then E again to extrude down. Let's make sure our normals are okay. And now only thing left is some table, so shift right click here and let's add a plane here, and I will just scale this on Y axis and maybe a little bit on X, move it in place. Make sure you're moving it in object mode so the origin point stays in the middle here. And now Shift S and cursor to select it. That's really important to have there for later. Now tab in, I'll press G and move this up, and we can make sure we are matching the height of the table here. Maybe not so much. It's a sitting table, so something like this. And now tab out and let's add another plane. And remember to make things really bulky, that will support that stylized look, something like this here. And we can extrude this up and add a mirror modifier and enable Y as well, and we have ourselves some really quick table. So now would be the time to go around your scene and try to fix some of the proportions. If for example you feel that this is too narrow, you can just go ahead and make it a little bit wider if you wish. Things like this. but I will leave it like that. We are on a short time here. The next thing I want to do is to give this really smooth look. I will add a bevel modifier everywhere, and before I do, I want to hide the things I don't want to bevel. So let's hide these boolean objects, let's hide the handles and the doors. These are the objects I want to bevel, and I want to bevel the floor as well, so these tiles are visible. First of all, let me select the table, and I will add the bevel modifier here. And now let's go to the geometry, and we'll disable clamp overlap and enable arc for later, maybe if we need it for some different object. And let's enable harden normals in the shading. So far this does nothing. We'll need to enable auto smooth later, but right now let's adjust the amount here and the number of segments to 2. Something like this should work. Okay, and now we'll select everything, and the table should be still highlighted in yellow. If it's not, make sure you shift click it as last object. And now let's click this little arrow and let's choose copy to selected. This is a new feature in the latest Blender, and it's quite useful. So right now we transfer to this bevel modifier everywhere, and we just need to check for some errors and mistakes. And I can see here this doesn't work so much, so we'll need to go ahead and adjust the angle on this bevel to something like 45, and we are basically good to go. And now what I want to do is to select everything, select the table as last, right click shade smooth, and let's go to the object data properties and normal section. And before clicking auto smooth, make sure you're holding alt key. That will enable this editing for every selected object. So alt key, click auto smooth, and by holding alt key we will increase this to 180 degrees, and this will make everything nice, beveled and smooth. And now I'll press alt H to unhide, and now our scene is basically ready. Let me just fix the proportions on the table here. I think it will be better if it's a little bit wider like this. Okay, and now I'll hold Shift S, snap cursor to world origin, and let's create some kind of backdrop, so it's only plane that I will scale out. And now let me press N for a sidebar, locate our PR IsoCam. If you don't have this add-on, you can find the link in the description down below with the note how to install it. And right here I will just choose True IsoCam. So we have 4:3 orthographic ratio here, and in the camera settings let's ramp up the orthographic scale to something like 18. And let's go to the output tab and let's enter something like 1600 to 1200. So we have 4:3 ratio, and let's press G, then Z, and move the camera up. So that's your scene, and now it's time for some materials. So first of all, let me hold Z and switch to material preview. And now I will select the background and choose some color so we actually better see our scene. This should be something like yellow color, and we will tweak this later. And now let's select the walls, and again I want to have some beige creamy color like this. That should work. A little bit more into the yellow maybe, just like that. And now let's create some accent colors. So let's select the cupboard and let's put in some bluish violet tones like this, and for this object as well. Now let's select the top board and we'll create a new material there, and let's create more saturated yellow color, like it's made out of wood or something. Okay, and we'll apply the same material here and for the table as well. And remember, we can tweak these materials later all at once. And now let's create a new material for the fridge. And now I want this to be red color, but a little bit more towards the purple, just a tiny bit like this. And I want to leave the fridge white, so I will just create a new material there and leave it white. Now let's select the sink, and we'll need some darker material here, so let's go almost all the way towards the black. And now let's find some color that will match our palette, something like a dark violet color. That should really work here. Window we can leave white, so let's choose that one here. And basically the last thing is the floor, and this will be a little bit tedious because I want it to have a checkerboard design. So let's go to the modifiers tab, select the first array, let's press Ctrl A to apply it, and apply the second as well. And now let's go to the material tab and let's add that white material. And now tab in, let's go for a face select, First of all, click outside to select everything, and by hovering over the tile and pressing L, we can select the linked vertices, and we can repeat pressing L to select the tiles we want to color. And you can go all the way here, but actually I just want to do it for the 2 rows. So let's create a new material slot. Let's select the dark material and click assign. That should be enough. And now let's look from the top and let's try to select all of these other vertices right here. Now let's press Ctrl plus to expand the selection, and X and delete vertices. So we have only 2 rows, and now we can go back to that array modifier here, and let's go -1 on X, and let's increase number to 4, and we have now some nice floor tilings. And one more material I want to make is some metal material. Let's select the handle, let's create a new material, and let's adjust the metallic all the way to 1. And now I will just distribute the same material here, just like that. And let's select the window, let's create a new material slot, and let's change principled to emission. This will be basically part of the lighting. Let's set this to something like 24 now, and we'll see how that works. And now let's go to the render properties and enable ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. And within the screen space reflections, you want to enable refraction. And now let's select these 2 faces and assign that emission material. Just to make the scene a little bit more interesting, I want to model some new objects here. So let's shift right click there, press shift A, and let's add a circle, and I will modify the vertices to 12. Now tab in, scale this down, press F to fill, E to extrude, S to scale, X and delete faces. So this will be glass, and now I'll just tab out. First of all, to make it more smooth, we can add one more loop down here and press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision modifier, and now we can add a solidify modifier as well, just like this, and make it a little bit more thick. Right click, shade smooth, and enable auto smooth, so we have those hard edges there. And to make this more in line with the rest, to make it smooth, we can just alt click the loop down here, bevel it with 2 segments like this, and tab out and press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision modifier. And now going to the modifiers, and let's add a solidify modifier to give it some thickness. Let's increase that thickness. Remember, this is really stylized work. And now let's go to the object data properties and enable auto smooth and right click and shade smooth. So this is our glass, maybe make it a little bit smaller, and we forgot to shade smooth the handles here as well. And now let's just duplicate it here. Let's just move it around, and maybe some plate. So shift right click, let's press shift A and add a circle. Now let's tab in, let's make it smaller, press F, E to extrude, S to scale, and again E and S, and maybe move it up a tiny bit, press X, delete faces. So this will be our plate, and again we can bevel the bottom part, press Ctrl 1, right click and shade smooth, and we can go and add that solidify modifier to give this some thickness, just like that, and enable auto smooth, so we have some edge there. Okay, that's a plate, and let's give it that red color, same the fridge has. And we enabled that screen space refraction in the render properties, so now we can just go ahead, create a new material, and let's scroll down and enable screen space refraction here on the material as well, and increase transmission all the way to 1. And we created some nice glass shader, and let's leave roughness at 0.5. It will look really nice. And now let's go to the camera view by pressing 0 on a numpad. Let's press Ctrl B to limit our render view. First of all, let's switch to render properties, switch to cycles, and I will enable GPU, set this to something like 512 samples, and enable some denoising. I use OpenImage for render denoising and optics for viewport denoising. That's really fast, and I'll increase the size of the tiles because that's better when you use GPU. And now I'll hold Z and go to rendered, And this is what we have here. So now we need to tweak the lighting a little bit. So first of all, let's go to the world lighting and increase the brightness of the scene like this, and let's put in some violet tone to blend the colors a little bit better, just like this. And let's reset the cursor to world origin again, and let's press Shift A and add a light, create an area light, bring it up, make it a little bit larger. And now I want to set this to something like 500 watts, just like this, to make it a little bit more bright. And now let's go to the background, increase the roughness and a little bit specular, so the more color will go through. And now we can tone those lights a little bit towards yellow, and I think the world color can be a little bit more violet, just like this. And of course some more yellow to this emission as well. Okay, let's go to the render tab, color management, and we'll try to increase the contrast here to high contrast and increase exposure. Okay, that works. And I want to tweak the background a little bit more towards the yellow, just like this. Basically, this is your small stylized kitchen. You can now just go ahead and render it out, and it should look just fine. I really hope you like this one. Did you saw how I deal with the lighting? When lighting these rooms, it's mostly all about the emission, some supporting area lights, and then the world lighting that makes all of the difference. And again, if you like this, please leave that like. It really helps the channel. If you're new to the channel and you'd like to see content like this in the future, please hit that subscribe. And I thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.